Hello everyone! Welcome back to Molly Pope Art. Here's a quick tutorial on how to draw and paint fuchsia flowers. I love these little flowers. They remind me of little ladies with fancy dresses on, and the hummingbirds absolutely love these flowers. So I have drawn my flower, my fuchsia flower, using a Bic mechanical pencil on white Canson multimedia paper. And first you're going to use a permanent red and sort of base coat the upper areas of the fuchsia flower. There's two little sort of bulbous areas at the very top of the flower, and you're going to use that alizarin crimson to sort of shade the deeper, darker areas of those areas on those two little bulbous areas on the top of the flower. And I did float in a little bit of Hooker's green because in a certain area of the flower that I picked to draw and then paint, there was a little green side to the very top area of that flower. And you're also going to base the stem portion with that red, and you're going to go back in and sort of shade a little bit with that alizarin crimson, which is a deeper, I would say it's like a burgundy red. So you're using a permanent red, which is a bright red, for the main portions of the flower. You're using that alizarin crimson to shadow certain areas, and then you're going to use burnt sienna for the areas of the flower that you want to show are in shadow or to pull out the detail that's on the flower. And I use the majority of the flower, I used a number 6 millimeter little angle brush. It's perfect for getting in the majority of the flower. And then for a little bit more precision, I switched to a number 8, kind of a mini size filbert brush. And then for the very fine detail, I used a little teeny tiny size 0 liner brush. And to begin painting the lower portion of that fuchsia, you're going to lay in some of that alizarin crimson, which is again that deeper burgundy red, in the shadow areas of the petal portion of the fuchsia flower. And then you're going to use the bright permanent red in the areas that would be not in shadow. So you're basically using those two reds to show the petals that are in, the portions of those petals that are in shadow, that would be shaded, and then the brighter permanent red is the color that you will use to show the areas on the petals that would be, the sunlight would be hitting them a little bit brighter. And to build up, you can see the difference in the colors of those reds. That was that bright permanent red that I just painted it on, and you can just see the difference, those two colors laying side by side, the difference in their colors, the difference in their values. So now I'm using a little bit of titanium white mixed with that permanent red, and it makes a really nice bright pink shade, and you're going to use that color on the tips of the petals to show where they would, the bright highlight, that is a bright highlight color, and really where the sunlight would be hitting those petals strongest. And each petal you're going to paint the same way. You're going to use your real reference material that you have. Like I said, I'm using a real little sample from my fuchsia plant that I have to see where the shadow areas are on that flower and where the highlight areas would be. It's very important if you want to paint realistically that you really observe where the shadow portions are on your subject and where the highlight areas are on your subject. And you want to paint those in. So the lighter areas would get the highlight colors and the deeper, darker shadow areas would get their deeper colors. The stem has these beautiful sort of, it looks like there are lines in that second little bulbous area at the top of the flower. So that's what I'm adding now, is that bright highlight color using that titanium white mixed with a permanent red. It almost makes like a hot pink color to add my highlight color. And I use that along the petals, and I use that along the stem portion, those bulbous stem portions on the fuchsia plant. And for the upper portion of the petals on the fuchsia, I'm using that permanent red to base the petals on that upper portion of the fuchsia flower. And so I wanted it to be a little bit brighter. You can see the real flower, how it does actually seem to be a little bit lighter on the top. So I'm using that permanent red, and the highlight color for that area is again mixed. You're going to mix titanium white into that area of the upper petals to give you a nice bright sort of that hot pink color, and it will help to give the illusion that those petals on the top are really on top. So that's the whole thing. When we're painting realistic, we're giving the illusion of shape to the flower with our paint. And I'm using my small liner brush to sort of pull out some of the details and refine some of those edges where the petals are overlapping each other, and adding some shadow into those areas. And I like to use that little liner brush to clean up the edges and to smooth them all out. It's very important, and it looks great if you just use your little liner brush to clean up all of the edges on your painting. And you can see how messy of a painter I am. You can see from this video, from start to finish, how much red paint I end up all with, having paint all over my hands. It's a normal thing for me. I eat it, wear it, live it. It ends up all over me. And I'm still using that little liner brush to add a nice bright highlight area to each of the edges on the petals. I added quite a bit more white this time to the paint mix just to get a nice bright little value change and highlight area to those petals. The real specimen that I used definitely had a bright highlight on the tips. So I wanted to show that and show that those edges were really getting the sunlight and the bright highlight along those edges. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'm always here for you guys. If you are trying to learn how to paint, you want to ask me any questions about my process, or if any of this seems confusing to you, I would love to have you reach out and ask me those questions. I'm happy to help you along your painting journey. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I definitely, absolutely appreciate you spending time on my channel and watching my tutorials. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again sometime soon.